Okay, welcome to Reco12. My name's Lisa.S and I suffer the disease of alcoholism. We'll begin with a moment's silence for the addict who's still suffering inside and outside of the rooms, followed by the we version of the set-aside prayer. Dear God, please set aside anything we think we know about ourselves, about our disease, about the big book, the 12 steps, the program, the fellowship, the people in the fellowship, and all spiritual terms, especially you, God, so that we may have an open mind and a new experience with all these things. Please help us to see the truth. We surrender this next hour to you. Your will, not ours, be done. Amen. I'm very blessed to be the host of this meeting and podcast. That is the Afro-Euro Timezones. I hope that you'll join us and draw strength and hope from these podcasts that we will host Fridays at 8 a.m. UK time and 10 a.m. at Europe time and South Africa time. Reco12 is an organisation with the mission of learning and sharing the similarities of addiction of all kinds and gaining and sharing tools and hope from others who are walking a similar path. We come together from all places, faiths and backgrounds to gain tools and hope from others. Speakers from our past meetings have represented many fellowships, addictions and afflictions. We look forward to continuing to add to the diversity of speakers and backgrounds, and I hope you'll reach out if you think your experience, strength and hope will benefit this special community. Our today's speaker is KTR, who will be speaking for around 25 minutes, and we'll get her to share, and then we'll get some questions and answers afterwards. If you have any questions during the share, please pop them in the chat, and we'll follow them up after. The Reco12 family of recovery resources continues to grow, and we have more and more resources for the addict and the loved ones of those addicted. We have all the recorded Reco12 shares and a couple of other super exciting projects, one of which is the Big Book Roundtable discussion, where we just dive into the 164 pages of the Big Book of Alcoholics Anonymous with a few recovered individuals who past speakers in Reco12 and really try to know and live the Big Book. Tradition 7. It's a self-supporting service, and we appreciate your help in keeping us working our step 12 in this manner. We gratefully accept one-time contributions through PayPal, Venmo, and Wise through the links in the chat and the show notes. We also offer a monthly subscription program called Reco12 Spearheads. To join in and help support these cool projects, please consider donating at www.reco12.com/support. Or you can click in the link in the chat of the live meeting or the show notes of the podcast. We look forward to growing each meeting deeper in effectiveness and understanding as we learn from and with our special speaker. Today we're blessed with Katie, who's going to share with us this morning on how recovery comes one day at a time. And I'm really looking forward to it. I'm so pleased to turn it over to you, Katie. Thank you, darling.
Good morning, everyone. Katie, grateful recovered addict. Well, this is nice, isn't it? Do you know what? I don't plan what I'm going to say when I speak. And this morning, my sponsors turned up on here. My sponsors turned up on here. Some good friends of mine have turned up on here. And Lisa's on here, who asked me to speak. And the story behind the speaking came quite funny. So I was driving along in the car and a friend of mine messaged and she said, oh, I've got to do a share at 8 o'clock in the morning. And, I need some solution. And I'm saying, you've got solution. You've been working this program for however long. Like, what do you mean you need some solution? She's like, oh, well, what I've done, I've told her that you'll do the share for me. And I'm like, oh, okay. So now I've got people that actually, are putting forward for shares, which is absolutely lovely. And me and Lisa had a chat after and we was laughing about a few things. And this is what, fellowship and what recovery is for me. It's like 1 minute I wake up in the morning and I'm going in one direction, but by the afternoon, something can happen and I end up in another direction. And this is the way that my recovery's been. I picked the topic of recovery and beyond one day at a time because I wanted to try and come in from my recovery from the difference of where I started to where I'm at now. And there's a reading in the book and I was looking through and I thought, you know what, where can I find something? You always find something within these beautiful pages, no matter what it is within life. You know, I can always open that page and there'll be something there, or somebody within my recovery will direct me to a page and there will be something there. And, you know, this book is the recipe for my recovery, the roadmap for my recovery. It shows me a different way of living from what I used to be. So, you know, my recovery has been really up and down since day one of me coming in. You know, I started drinking and using from a young age, from about 12 years of age. And that was off the back of my mum, my dad splitting up. And, you know, we used to be 2.4 children when I was younger. And it was me, my sister, my mum and my dad. We had great Christmases. My mum worked for the News of the World paper. My dad worked for the National Grid. And I didn't really want much as a child. You know, we had caravans, we had cars, and they had good jobs. And we had a really good family and a really tight upbringing. It was beautiful. My mum split up with my dad and she ended up going out with a criminal who was involved in a lot of criminal activity. It changed the dynamics of my house within seconds. And, you know, what used to be that really calm, peaceful, loving home with a mum that was constantly there, you know, making food, coming home from work, having my uniform done, all of that stuff, it disappeared over, you know, in the night. Just within seconds it had gone. And what I did, I found the streets, like I found outside. You know, my mum weren't one of them mums that would let me roam the streets for a while. And where I live in South East London, there's lots of council estates. So, you know, any of the kids that was feral or any of the kids that didn't have parents that was watching what they was doing, they'd be on the estates late at night. They'd be up to no good. They'd be in trouble with the police. They'd be in the parks that they weren't meant to be in. I found myself as that kid. You know, my mum had ended up in this relationship. My dad had left the home. No longer am I a 2.4 children, just me and my sister at home. It's now me and 5 other siblings in a 2-bedroom council estate. There's drugs being sold in the house. There's crime being brought into the house. So everything changed in a split second. I had to grow up. I could then no longer be that child. And I've realised now a few of these things is what kind of brought me into my using and my drinking, but it's not what made me an addict. I know what I suffer with today is because I suffer with a threefold mental illness, you know, that centres within my mind, my body and my soul. And once I start drinking or putting a substance into my body, I can't stop. And when I do stop, I can't stay stopped for a nice length of time. You know, I've always wanted to change the way I feel, whether it be within my friend groups, whether it be how my family perceive me, whether it be how you guys perceive me on screen. You know, if these group of friends are doing this, I want to be doing this. If this is going on here, I want to be doing this. And I always want to be better than everybody else. And I want to be thriving for that. You know, I've done it in my work. And it's really crazy because this is another thing. I worked all my life, and even during my active addiction, which went from alcohol to crack cocaine to heroin really quickly, I still maintained to keep that job, even through my using. Luckily for me, it was COVID because I could use behind the screen, you know, and this is how I probably ended up saving my job. But going through it, even with that, I was thriving. You know, I would need to be the best marketing manager at my game. I need to be at the best event sharing. I need to be here. I need people to see me. I need people to know that I'm great and that I'm doing well and that this is me. I've arrived. And, you know, at this moment in time, I don't do that job no more. I was made redundant and I've got a little cleaning job that I am doing. And to be honest with you, it's the happiest I've ever been, cleaning other people's stuff and going around doing that job. Like, it's something that I can just go into and I can do and I can just be myself and I don't have to be anybody else. And I absolutely love it. You know, I started taking cocaine from about the age of 13 and I was smoking crack by about the age of 13, 14 in the back of a little park where I shouldn't have been, and I absolutely loved it. I was always hanging around with older people. And now, thinking back at it, it was a bit weird, the situations that I was in. You know, if my bell come back home to me and said to me now that she was hanging around with 22-year-old, 27-year-old, 30-year-old men smoking crack in a house at 13, I would know that there's something that weren't quite right within that situation. But at the time, I thought I was an adult. I thought that this was normal behaviour. And, you know, I had to change myself to adapt within them places, because at certain times, there was times that I was petrified for my life with things that was going on, but I was acting the big one and acting like I was okay. 2021 was a big pivotal fall within my recovery. And quite a few of you know on here, it's not a secret, my husband is in active addiction and has been since I came into the fellowship. And in that moment, in 2021, due to mine and my husband's active addiction, my son had come to the house. My daughter had just gone off to school. I think she was about 11, maybe even younger, 10. And we'd been using for days and days and days, all over Christmas, all through the new year. It was about the 3rd of January, and I think she'd just gone back to school. It was the first day back to school. I dragged her out to get her back to that school. And the only reason I did that was because I wanted to then carry on using. My son tried to kill my husband in my home. And yeah, everything changed. Everything changed. Again, another moment within my recovery where something just changed. And I detoxed myself in my flat after that moment for 5 days. I wouldn't advise it to anyone, and I would say if you're going to do anything like that, please go and get professional help, because it is not something that I advise. You know, you can die by doing this stuff, but I did it, and you know, my best thinking took me out the door after them 5 days for another 2 years. So, you know, this is the point when we talk about in the doctor's opinion that we've got that irritable, restless discontent, and then we have that mental obsession, and I can't tell the truth from the false. And then I put that first one in me, and then I set off that phenomenal craving. And how long is that phenomenal craving going to take me? For me, it wasn't a day, a week, a month. It was 2 years. It took me out for 2 years, from 2021 to 2023. I was posting things on Facebook because I'm one of these that, you know, if everything's good outside and everyone can see that my house is tidy, my kids have got the best trainers, I'm doing this, I'm driving this car, then everything's okay. But it's not. It's an absolute mess behind it. I was a master of masking, you know. And I posted a few things, and a lady who was already within the fellowship, and I'd used with this lady, believe it or not. She was someone that I used with. She was older than me. And she was on the circuit of where I was on in South East London. There's like certain pubs that people would go to. She'd always be there. She'd always look tidy. And I used to, you know, want to use the same way as her. Well, she was in the fellowship, and she kept sending me these little posts. And the posts had on them like meetings, flyers to come to. And she said to me, look, you're an addict. She said, you're fucked. You really need help. And I was totally in denial. I was like, there is no way I'm an addict. You mental. Like, this is not a problem for me. And she said, look, please come to this meeting. This went on for a couple of months. And in the end, in the July in 2023, so my sobriety date is the 26th of August, 2023. In the end, in the July, I was like, do you know what? I'm going to just go and see what this stuff's all about. Let me just have a little look. And I came in, and I didn't have my camera on. I didn't have my name up. And I was hiding behind a different name and a different screen. And there was all these people in the rooms, and they was happy. They had nice hair. They had good teeth. They was talking about their kids. They was talking about, you know, going to Unity. They was talking about sponsors. They was talking about a big book. And I was just like, what is this stuff? What is going on here? And I kind of sat like a rabbit in the headlights in the back thinking, what's she bringing me to? You know, there was a bit of talk about God. And I was just like, I'm not sure about this, but there was something about the rooms that kept bringing me back. So I kept coming back. And in the end, I got myself that sponsor, and then I picked up that book, and wow, that was when my life completely changed. So, you know, from all of the carnage and all of the chaos that was going on, there was actually a solution for me. And the solution was in these rooms. And it was like, didn't matter that my husband had gone to jail, my son had gone to jail, I'd lost my child, and that I was there doing nothing on my own and still like using. People come in and they said, it's all right, you know, you're like us, we're like you, let us show you what it is we do. And everyone was just so kind and caring and loving, and I was like, this stuff's like mental. Anyway, I stuck with it. And I was like, do you know what? I'm going to stick. I'm going to get myself a sponsor. And my first ever sponsor was a lady. And, she sent me the big book. She kept calling me every day, which I thought was really strange. I was like, why is this woman like calling me? What is it that she's calling me for? And she kept calling and she was like, how's your day been? I'm thinking, I don't know this lady from Adam. She's asking me how my day is. She sent me this big book that, I didn't even know. And as I opened the pages, it was like, I don't know what this means. She said, don't worry, I'm going to take you through. I'm going to show you, In the end, I was like, I don't think this is gelling a little bit with me and this lady. So I went back to the lady that originally sent me the meetings and I said to her, listen, Liz, I need you to sponsor me. She said, Kate, me and you have been friends for over 30 years. We used together. She said, it'll never work. And I was like, well, do you know what? I need to like get this stuff. And I kept hearing people say, go with what you're attracted to. And if you want something that somebody's got. And it was her that I wanted. I wanted what she had because, I see how she used. She was the same kind of user as me. And she'd come in and she'd changed. There was a transformation. And I just wanted what she got. In the end, I kept picking and picking. And she said, look, I'll tell you what, I will sponsor you. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say to you, when we're on our meetings and we're doing our stuff, this is me as Liz, the sponsor. And when she was talking to me as us in our friendship, she'd say, now is Liz talking to you in our friendship. So we had that separate line of friendship, sponsorship, and she really stuck to it, She put the fear of God in me with some things that she'd teach me and some things that she'd say. But I stuck with her because whenever she spoke, she always used to have this way of saying to me, she'd say things like, listen, Angel, you've got this. And I'd come away and it's like whenever there was moments that I had that mad twist where I was thinking about using it the early days, I could hear her saying, Angel, you've got this. And it kind of steered me in a direction of, okay, you don't need to pick up, you don't need to use, you don't need to do this stuff. I come in and I started running with recovery, like really like I run with my using. I'd put down the drink, I'd put down the drugs, I picked up the book, I'd come to meetings every day. I spent a year and a half on 2 particular meetings every single day, one at 10:30 in the morning. I was there every day at 10:30 in the morning for a year and a half. The same with me, evening meeting. Spiritual Cartel is my home group, and I spent a year and a half on that meeting. Now, during that time, this was where I learned that I had to have a psychic change. There had to be something within me that needed to change, and it had to be with using something out there that's greater than myself. And that year and a half gave me the insight that I needed through the book, through recovery, through people, with what it was that I needed to do. And it didn't come naturally at first. Like, for me, I don't sit still much. I'm 100 miles an hour. I constantly run from stuff to block things out. But people were saying things to me like, you need to just sit still. You need to just feel. You need to just this. You need to just that. And, what I used to do was take what I needed and leave the rest. If this worked, I took that. And if that worked, I took that. But I followed the program, and I followed it how it tells me in page 58 to 59 how it works. That them 2 pages are there for a reason. It's there to tell us how this stuff worked. And then I come through into doing all my steps and, working through them steps gave me growth. For me, when I say, this is recovery and this is beyond, it's not just about picking up the book and going through the steps. It was about having an entire psychic change. And the way that I had that entire psychic change was by the 4th step, looking at where I'd been resentful, fearful, harmful, all of that stuff that I'd done, and then seeing where it was objectionable and looking at my part in it. Like, these defects that I had, they was keeping coming up, like repeated ones. There was ones that was justified also that kept popping up. And it was like, what do I need to do with this stuff? And then what do I need to take away from this? And how do I need to do that? Well, that's easy. I have to have God's help. I have to make a decision every single day with no reservations, no apprehensions, no nothing, that I have to come in and I have to say, today I hand my life and will over to the care of God as I understand God. Whatever that is for you, for me, it's a simple practice of there's something out there that's not me, that's working for me, and out there that's better than me. And the way that I do this is by through talking, through how I would talk to any one of you on screen. You know, how do we get a relationship with Jaina's, with Andrew, with Joanna, with Lisa? The way I get that relationship with you guys is by connection, is by picking up the phone, and it's by building that relationship. That's the same way that I build my relationship with God. I have to talk. I have to say prayer. I have to say what's on my mind. And then through meditation, you know, it's that calming time where I can listen for what it is that I need to be listening to. Sometimes nothing comes, you know, and other days there'll be a lot that comes, but it's this growth. And it tells us in the doctor's opinion that this stuff that I suffer with will be repeated over and over and over again until that person can have that entire psychic change. You know, there's pages at the back of the book, that spiritual experience talks about the entire psychic change. It talks about change. I said at the beginning of my share that I was going to have a reading that I was going to read. I fly all over the place, you see. But, you know, the page that I want to be drawn to is page 288. And it says, you know, a confidence and a faith has entered my life and unrevealed a plan for me that was bigger and better than I could ever have imagined. That's what's happened to me since I got God in my life. This plan is way bigger and better than I can ever imagine. You know, I've still got my husband in active addiction. He's just gone back to prison. He's looking at a big trial in the 1st of June, within 6 months. But today, that bigger and better plan than I ever can imagine is God. I leave that where that is because I've got no control over that. My biggest defects is control, enabling, emotionally entangled, all driven by fear, let me tell you. You know, all of it root and branch from the bottom, driven by fear. It goes on to talk about, look, it's not easy. It's never been easy, but it gets better. And that is the truth. That is my experience. That is how it has been for me. It has got better across time, but I still managed to deal with things that are popping up in my life. Husband in active addiction, daughter that was self-harming, not in school. You know, my other daughter just coming out of rehab. But today, there's things that have changed. My eldest daughter's just had another baby. I'm a nan again, you know, and beautiful Tallulah. She's absolutely amazing. She's a little Buddha. She's so beautiful. And, you know, I didn't have that girl in my life 6 months ago. She didn't want me to even see the baby, didn't want me to have nothing to do with it. I left that relationship where it was. And the way I left the relationship where it was is that I haven't got no control over what she thinks about me. I've got no control over the way that, you know, she wants to run her life. She wants to do her stuff. I need to let it be. And when I did let it be, things unravelled, you know. She's come and approached me, Mum, do you want to come and meet me for coffee? Do you want to come and see my pram? Yeah, of course I do. You know, I've let that go like that. And my youngest daughter, Belle, she went in school. You know, she didn't want to do her exams, didn't want nothing to do with school. I let that go. And now she's in school. She's doing her exams. You know, the stuff with my relationship, with my marriage, I've had to let that go. You know, all of this has been going on. And this is why I said recovery and beyond. Because sobriety for me, you know, it doesn't mean punishment. It means me taking accountability. There's so much more to it than just picking up this book. And it's the power greater than myself that works for me without there that does this stuff, you know. It goes on in that reading to talk about, you know, that over the last, it says 7 years, but I've put over the last 2.5 years because I cross my book out and I make it talk to me. Everything I thought that I could not stay sober has happened, indeed. And sobriety in the life full of ups and downs. It's been full of ups and downs. And it says occasionally depression can creep back into my life. It does. Sometimes I am really depressed and things creep back in. It also says, you know, sometimes we require outside help. And it's took me this length of time of coming in to realise that I do need a little outside help. I've got a lot of abandonment issues from stuff that happened as a child. I've got a lot of rejection issues, stuff that happened as a child. But I don't need to use on any of that today. I can come in and say, you know what? I need a little bit of help here. Let me go and get it. Let me hand this over to God today. It's not me that needs to be running this show, you know, and it tells us, what's the reading? Page 86, on awakening, it tells us we relax, we take it easy, we do not struggle. That is something that I take into my day. You know, the moment that I start to run off over here, or the moment that I'm running over here, or I'm putting other stuff in place of what really matters, that's not God's will for me. That's not God where he wants me to be, you know. That's me running on self-will. That's Kate taking over the show again and trying to, you know, push things into the direction that I see. And I know when I do that, it does not work. You know, the way I explain it sometimes is the fact that there's I always see it as like a tunnel, and there's all these different doors that are open, and God opens them for me and says, like, look, this is the path, and I slam the door, and then the next door, and I slam it again, and then I slam it again. But it's not until I've slammed them doors so many times and sat in so much pain that I then go, okay, this is where God's showing me. You know, all those things that I spoke about when my husband was stabbed by my son, when my daughter was, you know, living with somebody else. God was working for me in a way then, and I didn't even realise. It's not till I come back out of it and I look and say, okay, I see what was going on here. You took that from me. You took that from me. That happened there, because I had to sit there. And without all of that going on, I wouldn't have been able to sit in that, you know. It's amazing what recovery can do when you come in and you learn these tools and you learn about different coping mechanisms, different ways to look at resentments, different ways to see our shortcomings, how we work the flow of 6 and 7, because they're really important steps to me today. You know, there's a beautiful lady, she's a spiritual teacher of mine, and she was the one that taught me it's either yes or it's a no. There's no apprehension, there's no reservations. And she always says to me, and it's stuck in my mind, pause, where's your course correction? And I always remember that, you know, whenever this stuff is going on. You know, I have a male sponsor today. He's on this meeting and he teaches me a lot as well. And I'm very grateful to him. I'm grateful for the work that he puts in. I'm grateful that he shows up for his recovery. I'm grateful that he does service, because it helps me to be accountable when I'm seeing other people doing this stuff. You know, unity service recovery is a big part of that. It's the triangle, you know, and if I put God in the centre of that, to me, that flow will always keep flowing. You know, unity, service, recovery, God in the middle, keep flowing, keep flowing, keep going, keep going. I don't ever want to go back to the life that I had before. It was carnage, it was chaos, it was misery, it was sadness. There was a lot of dark things that happened within that time. And this is why I said, you know, recovery and beyond, because there's so much more beyond, so much more beyond. This is just the beginning part of my journey, you know, and I know there's so much more to come, so much more to come. I don't like sitting stagnant in recovery. When people say to me that they're bored in recovery, I'm like, what? How can you be bored in recovery? You know, we have these principles, we have the concepts, we have the traditions, we have the steps. There's so much more than just coming to a meeting, sharing, looking at the steps. We can work on ourselves and we can keep working on ourselves. You know, my emotions today are not controlled by somebody else's addiction, and they was for a long, long time. But that is because I hand over. You know, I've built a bigger life for myself than the trauma that I was living, and I absolutely adore recovery. I love the people in fellowship. I like coming to meetings. I like sharing a message. And I'm excited to see what's coming next. And that is my truth. You know, I don't wake up in the morning feeling sad, feeling like life is not great. I wake up grateful. Not every day, but, you know, this is why I have to do a gratitude list, because a gratitude list brings me back to see what's the beauty within the day. Sometimes it can be a flower, it could be a plant, it might just be a moving cloud, it could be anything like that. I never see that stuff before. I walked around with my eyes wide closed. You know, they was open, but they was closed to the world. I hope somebody's got something from what I shared today. And if you haven't, like I always say, is, you know, take what you need, leave the rest. There's loads of speakers. And yeah, thank you, Lisa, for asking me to come and share it today. Thank you.
Got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M and me, Justin B, on Reco12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M, streaming now on your favorite podcast platform.
Oh, thank you so much, Katie. I love that. You're such an inspiration from your journey so far, and like you say, it's a journey for life. So if anyone's got any questions, they want to come in and raise your digital hand or pop some questions in the chat. We've got the next 20 minutes or so. Come on in, guys. Okay, I was going to ask you, Katie, that was beautiful. And, when you talked about the recipe, I know, the workbook we worked through, but for those who don't have the workbook, what Cameron F has produced, how would you describe the recipe what we use?
Do you know what? I always describe the recipe with my sponsees when I'm working with them because I like to use analogies. And I always say to them, right, when you bake a cake, you need the spoon, you need the baking powder, you need the ingredients that go in. And for me, the ingredients is the steps, a sponsor, the stuff that we have to do on a daily basis, our practice. And as long as you have got those things for the recipe, which is our recovery recipe, you put it all in and you're doing all of those things as instructed, as directed, as suggested, you'll come out with that cake at the end. If we follow the instructions and we bake it as it's supposed to be baked, i.e., if we come in and we look at those steps, page 58, 59, how it works, following the suggestions, at the end result, if you do those things, God could have more if he was salt. And if we do that, then I don't think that there's a place where we can kind of go wrong at the end of it. What does it say? Rarely have we seen a person fail who thoroughly followed our path, that recipe, those steps. Yeah, I think that's probably the way that I'd describe it. Thank you, Lisa.
Brilliant. Thank you, Katie. Andrew, can you unmute?
Yeah, thank you, Lisa, for your service. Thank you so much, Katie. You're truly a blessing to recovery and to the fellowships that you're involved in. The question I ask is, it says in the 12 and 12 that pain is the touchstone of growth. Can you talk a little bit about how the trials that you've had in recovery that you spoke about in your share, how they contributed to your growth in recovery as well?
Certainly can. I've definitely gone through a lot of pain. I'll tell you that much. I've definitely gone through a lot of pain. But sometimes the pain that I go through is caused by myself. Probably 9 times out of 10, the pain that I go through is caused by myself. I don't need to be in that pain through stuff that I've been suffering with because I've brought myself to it. And for me, I'm one of these that something has to be repeated many times. My mum used to say to me, if you do not feel, or the other way round, something to do with if you do not hear, you feel. That's what my mum used to say to me, and I never used to listen at nothing, so I always felt that pain. And pain for me has been growth. Whenever I've sat in that pain, whenever something has happened, I've always got out of it the other side. There's a lady that she speaks quite around spiritual scripture and stuff like that. And she said to me once before, the saying, as we walk through the shadow of the valley of the shadow of death. And she said to me, she's like, Katie, you're walking through the shadow. You're not dead. Like, you're feeling the pain, but you're just walking through that shadow. You're still going through it. Keep going through it. So it's things like that when people tell me stuff like that about, those who have been before me, those that have gone through that pain before me. That's where I take in, my strength, because if somebody else has gone through it and they're still there, then there's a way for me to go through with prayer, with God, in silence sometimes if I have to, and having that solitude, knowing that I'm all right. And that's what I have to do, is ground myself quite a few times, is ground myself through the pain and say, you know, you're not dying, you're here, you're fine. Like, other people have been through this. It's not that bad. You'll get through it. You know, just reminding myself. So I hope that sort of answers what you're saying. I like the 12 and 12. It's a bit more intense. I thought you was going to ask me a hard question. I was thinking he's going to ask me something because I'm going to have to be accountable. Thank you, Andrew.
Thank you both. And Tamra, do you want to come in?
I'm an alcoholic. Katie, brilliant share. Thank you so much. That was really a blessing. So I put my question in the chat, and what the question is can you give some specific examples of how selfishness and dishonesty, meaning lies you tell yourself, delusions, false beliefs, show up in your daily 10th and 11th step? And then maybe I'm being greedy. There's a second question. And that is in taking, they're similar. In taking, and it's in the chat, by the way, in taking a daily inventory, what have you become increasingly aware of? You know, I think I just want to share one quick thing. I know this is a Q&A, but for me, resentment, you know, when I came in here, it was either angry or happy. You know, there was really no other feelings that I could identify. So resentment and fear are pretty easy for me to identify. And I always found it a little bit harder to watch for the selfishness and the dishonesty. So when I get to the 11th step review, I really have to think about, well, what delusions, what lies was I telling myself today? Where were all these fancied ideas and fears, you know, that my mind was creating? So yeah, that's the first one. And then the selfishness is just harder to see, especially if I'm on autopilot and sleepwalking. So that's it.
So my selfishness presents itself in the form of, you know, with my husband in active addiction, and it shows up a lot, hell of a lot. So my selfishness will come in and say, you know, you have to be behaving in this way for me to feel okay. You know, you need to stop using for me to feel okay. If you don't stop using, then I'm not going to be okay. But then when I strip it back and actually look at it, that's me, selfish. You know, my needs. I need a husband. I need you at home. I need you to behave like this. And effectively, someone said to me before, there's like, Katie, it's like you're writing a script for him and he hasn't been given that script. He's not going to behave in that way. Like you're expecting someone to be in this level on this way. He's in active addiction, and it's through my selfishness. The delusional side of it is I'll lie to myself. I'll tell myself that I'm okay. You know, I'll sit on meetings and say, yeah, I've got this is okay, but I'm not. Sometimes there's that fear, there's that lie that creeps in at the back. You know, there's other stuff that came up within my inventory. You know, I was going through a step 4 and 5 recently, and, you know, on that, there was stuff that I judged my husband for behaving in particular ways of what he was doing, going out stealing, going out committing crime, going out doing certain things, judging. And then when I stripped back and had a look at what I was doing, I was in the nail shop buying meat that was dodgy and picking up soap powder. And it wasn't until after that I got on with my sponsor and I'd sat back and it was like, hang on a minute. You've just come and give me this resentment on these behaviours that these repeated that you're trying to justify, and you're doing the same thing. You're enabling that behaviour. You're behaving in the same way. So, you know, all of that stuff there has shown me. My inventory stuff is of a night time when I'm doing my nightly review. I have to look really closely because, you know, the questions sometimes as well, when it will say things like, have you been loving and kind to all? My first reaction will be, yeah, I have been. But then it could be something that somebody on a meeting might have said something and I've laughed. And then I'm like, well, actually, that's not kind to all. So I strip things back in that sense. But I've suffered with a repeated resentment that I couldn't deal with and I couldn't get rid of, and it was all around my husband, and that was all to do with the delusional thinking, you know, that I should be this wife because this is the way that you should see me as a wife, this is the way that other people should see me, you should respect me in this way. It weren't until I looked at the back of it of why I'm fearful. The fear is I don't want to be alone, I don't want to be on my own, you know. And where does that fear come? What I'd spoke about within my share, rejection and abandonment. I don't want to go back to that feeling of when I was younger that everyone's gone. And it does stem back from that. When I really look at it, those repeated resentments that I keep getting is really all to do with my delusional thinking and the fear. So I hope that that's sort of covered it. Thanks for your question.
Thank you, guys. Thank you, Tamara. Beautiful question. And Katie, great response. Janers, can you unmute?
Hey Spearheads, if you're looking to dive deeper into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss Reco12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the big book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to Reco12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform.
Couldn't for a minute then, but yes, thanks Lisa for hosting. Katie, Janers, alcoholic addict. Katie, I don't always need to share, but I want 2 of you. Thank you for your share. You've changed on the screen. I don't know whether it's me or whether it's you, but there's something different, and in a good way. Not that it was ever different, but like, I don't know what the shift is. However, I keep having all of these shifts because I'm still early in emotional sobriety. Emotional stuff comes up, we talk, and I adore that and I appreciate you. I just want you to know that. When it comes to self-care, I'm not talking about like asking questions from the book, more on an emotional side of things, and like balancing everything out so it doesn't get overwhelming. What do you do for you? Because you do a lot for lots of people and your family. You always say you're showing up for your family. That's service, Janers. That's service, Janers. And you're doing that. It's great. It's lush. I love the Christmas decorations and all of it. It's just lush. What do you do for you that you can really kind of just chill? Because that's hard when you're giving service and you're doing stuff like that. It's not easy, is it? Being a busy working mum. Any advice would be really grateful. Thanks.
You know what? My sponsor's on here and he always says this to me. Have you had some self-care today? You know, like, what is Katie doing for herself today? Because I am a runner and I run from stuff, you know, like, so for me to do self-care, and I'm also like a protector, you know, like I like to help. I do really like to help, and sometimes I'd rather be running around helping everyone else and I'll cover everything that's going on in what I've got going on. So, you know, my sponsor does pick me up on self-care. So what I do for self-care is, you know, occasionally me and Belle will take a holiday. So we've had a good few holidays since I've been in recovery, not we've been, but since I've been in recovery, I've had a good few holidays. So, you know, I take that time out to do that occasionally. I like to get my nails done. I like to go and have a sunbed. I like to go and walk out in nature. You know, just only 2 days ago, I filmed going through the park and there was like red berries, and then there was like a big stem with like this furry kind of plant. I don't even know what plant it is, but I like to film that, and I like to film things like, you know, the length of the grass or the bug that's on the grass. And that's a weird thing, but that to me is self-care, because that's me coming out of myself and actually taking in something to do with outside, that I'm being aware and I'm noticing and I'm having discipline. I'm not great at doing self-care, I must admit. Like, I run quite a lot and I help quite a lot of people. So, you know, I do have to be picked up on that, but I have got a good sponsor that sees that through my grats, through my inventory, through my step 10s, through my nightly review, and he will pick up on that and go, at what you're doing for yourself today. You know, so this is why it is good to have a sponsor that knows you and can see that you're running on no fuel and say to you, Young, it's time for you to take some self-care. So, you know, lucky for me, I have got that sponsor that notices that and picks me up on it. And yeah, just walking about in nature. I did used to run. I maybe might start picking that up at some point, but I've been poorly. So, you know, I might start running again at some point. Thanks, Janus.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Janus. Thank you, Katie. And Joanna.
Hi, thank you for the meeting. Katie, thank you for your share. I loved hearing you this morning because I missed your share yesterday. So I'm pleased that I heard you. You are an inspiration to me, and I just love seeing you. So my question is, you mentioned quite a few times rejection and abandonment. So, as you know, I found my birth mother, and I looked. It took me 51 years, and she still hasn't got back to me. I know I've got to trust God, and I'm just finding it a bit hard. And I keep looking at her on Facebook, and I've just got so many questions. And I know I've got a hand, like she said, just don't contact me again. And I've got a hand and trust God. But like, what do you do? And it, like, I just keep saying, like, why? Like, why won't she answer me? And why won't she just answer my questions? And I can't be selfish, and I know all of that, and I've got to hand it over. But what if God's not right in this situation? I'm thinking, and like, what do you think? What would you do?
Oh, thank you, Joanna. You know, I've seen your journey with this one, and I was actually meaning to reach out to you, so I'm glad that you've questioned this, and let's have a conversation outside of this meeting separately.
Yeah.
Go more in depth on
Okay.
it because it's private to you. But in answer to your question, I've dealt with a lot of stuff like that. For me, I really do have to say to myself, look, nothing happens in God's world by mistake. What is meant for me will never pass me. And I have to have that acceptance, you know, like it's really, really a big thing for me is the acceptance. And the expectations, you know, my big thing is like, I always find that I get really hurt when somebody else is not behaving in the way that I expect them to behave, and that my serenity just gets battered, and I end up like how you are now, you know, like really down and in myself and crying about stuff. And I bring myself to that place. You know, it tells us in the book, doesn't it, that we bring ourselves into the place of being hurt sometimes. And you know what? That's not even nobody's fault, but I can do that to myself so much by, you know, having this stuff going on. So I always just go, do you know what? It's okay. It's going to be okay. You can get through this. Nothing is happening for you that shouldn't be happening for you. And the reason I think that is because at that moment in time when my son had stabbed my husband and all that carnage was going on, that was the place I was in. And it was the worst place in my entire life at that moment. But now that I've stepped away from it and I'm 2 years and a bit on, I now look at that time and go, I understand why that has happened. There might be things that's going on around your circumstances, reasons why you're not getting that coming back. Do you know what I mean? We can have a conversation outside after anyway, but there could be very much stuff that we don't know why behind it. Do you know what I mean? We don't need to know why either, but I'm there for you, Joanna. Let's catch up definitely after the meeting at some point, darling. I love you.
Okay, love you. Thank you. I've got to go, guys. I'm sorry. I need to get into work.
Thank you, Joanna. And
Bye.
thanks, Katie. That was beautiful. Okay, guys, if no one else has got any more questions, thanks again, Katie. It's just fantastic. And it was a great Reco12 speaker meeting for all addicts and their loved ones. If we didn't get to any questions or you have any other questions, please consider joining our WhatsApp community by sending an email to reco12pod@gmail.com. And you can join in there on our community and ask those questions. If you'd like to be a future speaker on Reco12 Afro-Euro, please send an email again to reco12pod@gmail.com. And if you've not yet rated and received the podcast in Apple Podcasts, please go do so now. It's a great way to work your 12-step in sharing this message with others. next week. We'd love you all to come back. I have Olivia J, who's going to come and speak with us. I'm really excited about that, from the UK. And now we're going to hand over to Katie for a last bit of service and do a prayer of her choice. Thank you, Katie.
Do you know what? I'm always mindful that we have different religions, we have different beliefs, and we have different stuff going on within meetings. So, you know, I'll just take us out in the traditional way with the serenity prayer, if that's okay, guys. So, God, be the serenity.
Grant us the serenity.
Accept the things
we cannot change.
the courage to
change the things we can.
and the wisdom to know Thy will be done, not mine. Amen.